All right, welcome to our explainer on assessing speaking skills. Have you ever wondered how someone's speaking ability is actually measured in a formal setting? Well, today we're going to break down the key concepts, and we're basing it all on the framework from Brown and Abiwick-Rama. So here's what's on the docket. We'll kick things off with the 5 main categories of speaking. Then we'll dig into the specific skills, the little details, and the big picture stuff that assessors are looking for. And finally, we'll explore the actual tasks they use, all the way from simple repetition to a full-blown conversation. So let's start at the very beginning, with the foundation. Pretty much any speaking assessment you'll ever come across is going to fall into one of these 5 basic categories of performance. I want you to think of this like a spectrum. On one end, you've got imitative speaking, or 노이바치역, which is really just repeating what you hear. And way over on the other end, there's extensive speaking, 독토이 말랑, which is basically delivering a monologue. As we move through the middle, you'll see how everything gets more complex and more interactive. Okay, so we've got our 5 types. But what are assessors actually looking for within those types? What skills are being measured? Well, that's where this key distinction between micro skills and macro skills comes into play. So what's the difference? Well, think of micro skills, or vikirinang, as the nuts and bolts of the language. We're talking about individual sounds, correct grammar, your choice of words. Macro skills, or viimokinang, are the big picture. How do you use all those little pieces to communicate fluently, to manage a conversation, and to use the right style for the situation? Any really good assessment has to look at both. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty and see how these skills are actually tested. We're going to start at the most controlled, most structured end of the spectrum, with tests that are designed to assess those imitative and intensive speaking skills. So, imitative speaking, 노이바치역, is 100% about accurate reproduction. It's not about creativity, it's not about understanding. The only goal here is to see if a person can hear a sound or a phrase and just repeat it perfectly. All the focus is on pronunciation and getting the sounds right. And the task for this is about as straightforward as it gets. Simple repetition. The test taker hears something, and their one and only job is to echo it back as accurately as they possibly can. That's it. Okay, taking it up just one notch, we have intensive speaking, or 노이투인소. Now, this is more than just mimicking. This requires the speaker to produce a short bit of language on their own to prove that they have control over a specific grammar point or a piece of vocabulary. The tasks for intensive speaking are still really controlled. For example, a directed response task might ask you to change a verb tense. A read-aloud task is great for checking pronunciation in a bit more context, and something like a dialogue completion task gives a cue for a very specific targeted response. All right, now we're moving into the middle of our spectrum, and this is where things start to get really interesting. The tasks become less controlled, and they start to look a whole lot more like a real everyday conversation. This is where we assess responsive and interactive skills. Responsive speaking, or nói phản hồi, is all about short, genuine interactions. Imagine a simple question and answer. The replies are meaningful, but the whole exchange is pretty brief. The focus here is on how well you can manage that quick, authentic back and forth. So, common responsive tasks would be things like asking simple, open-ended questions. What did you do last weekend? Or maybe asking someone for directions. There's no single correct answer. You have to come up with a reply that's not just grammatically right, but is also coherent and creative. And now we get to interactive speaking. Nói tương tác. This is where true conversational skill really gets put to the test. We're talking about longer, more complex, and way more unpredictable exchanges. Here, we're looking for someone who can not just respond, but can also initiate topics, maintain a conversation, and really manage the flow of a discussion. And what's so great is that tasks like these directly mirror real-world communication. An interview, a role play, or dongvai, or a group discussion. These are all designed to see how a learner can navigate the complex, spontaneous nature of a genuine conversation. A prompt like this is a perfect example. It sets up a specific, real-world scenario with a clear goal. Now, to do this well, the test taker needs more than just words. They need to know how to bargain, how to use polite language, and how to manage the give and take of that whole interaction. Okay, last but not least, let's head to the other end of our spectrum. Now we're going to look at tasks where the speaker has to hold the floor for a while, with little to no interruption from anyone else. This is extensive speaking, or 독토이 말랑. And as the name suggests, it's all about producing a longer, structured piece of speech, like a presentation or telling a story. The big test here is, can you organize all your thoughts and deliver a sustained, coherent talk all on your own? And you can see that need for structure reflected in the tasks themselves. An oral presentation, for example, requires planning and a logical flow. Or in a picture-cued task, a speaker gets a few images and has to weave them into a story. The real focus is on fluency, organization, and delivering a complete, cohesive message from start to finish. So that brings us to the big question, right? After seeing all this, which of these tasks do you think tells us the most about a learner's actual overall ability? Well, the truth is there's no single right answer. A truly comprehensive assessment will always use a mix of these tasks to build a complete picture, from the basic sounds all the way to complex, fluent conversation. This video is brought to you by the IELTS Focus, Zalo 0847-705973, an English center specializing in IELTS preparation.